Hey guys, welcome back to the Hypnosophist Historian. Tonight, we will turn our gaze away from the sun-drenched peaks of Mount Olympus, away from the boisterous feasts and golden halls of the familiar gods. Instead, we venture into the twilight, to the quiet and often overlooked spaces that lie in between. We seek a presence far more ancient, a power more subtle, whose dominion is not over the thunder or the sea, but over the boundaries that define them. She is the whisper at the crossroads, the shadow that flickers at the edge of the firelight, the keeper of keys to doors unseen. Tonight, we begin our slow, meditative journey into the realm of Hecate. In the grand, luminous tapestry of Greek mythology, the threads that shine brightest are often those of the Olympians. We know them well. Zeus, with his thunderbolt and commanding presence. Apollo, driving his sun chariot across the sky, a figure of radiant order and art. Athena, born in full armour, the embodiment of strategic wisdom. Their stories are writ large, filled with epic clashes, grand passions, and heroic deeds that have shaped the foundations of Western literature and thought. They are the celestial royal court, their dramas played out on a stage of cosmic significance. But beyond the glow of this divine court, in the liminal spaces where light fades into shadow, dwells another kind of power. A power that is quieter, more ambiguous, and in many ways more profound. This is the domain of Hecate. Her name, pronounced Hecate, carries with it a resonance of antiquity, a sound that feels unearthed rather than created. For many, a first encounter with Hecate comes through simplified labels: the goddess of witchcraft, the queen of ghosts, a dark and formidable figure associated with the macabre. While these associations hold a sliver of truth, particularly in her later portrayals, they are a profound disservice to her original complexity. To truly meet Hecate is to understand that she is not a goddess of the dark, but a goddess who is comfortable in it, a guide who holds a torch to illuminate its passages. She represents not an end, but a transition. Imagine yourself an ancient traveller, journeying on foot as night begins to fall. The paved road of the city gives way to a dirt track, and the familiar sounds of civilization recede. Ahead, the path splits into three. The air grows still and cool. The only light comes from a sliver of moon casting long dancing shadows from the cypress trees. To the left, the path disappears into a dark wood. To the right, it winds toward the unseen sea. Straight ahead, it climbs a desolate hill. This is a place of absolute uncertainty, a physical and metaphorical intersection of possibilities. It is here, in this potent moment of choice and transition, that the ancient Greeks felt the presence of Hecate most keenly. She is, above all, a liminal deity. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, meaning a threshold. Hecate governs these in-between states, the sacred and often unsettling thresholds of existence. She stands at the doorway between the home and the wilderness, at the city gates dividing civilization from the unknown, at the shoreline where land meets the endless sea. Her power is felt at dawn and at dusk, those magical times that are neither fully day nor fully night. She is present at birth, the transition from the womb to the world, and she is present at death, guiding the soul across the ultimate threshold into the underworld. Unlike the other gods who demanded grand temples built in the centre of cities, Hecate's shrines were often humble and personal. They were placed at the entrances to homes, small icons to ward off malevolent spirits, for as the guide of ghosts, she also held the power to turn them away. Her primary altars were the crossroads themselves, marked perhaps by a simple pile of stones or a carved wooden pole. Here, travellers would leave offerings, not out of the same kind of reverent worship offered to Zeus, but with a more intimate sense of acknowledgement and appeasement. They sought her blessing for a safe journey, her guidance in making a difficult choice, or her protection from the unseen things that lurked in the night. To begin to understand her is to embrace paradox. She holds twin torches, a symbol of light and revelation, yet she is most at home in the darkness. She carries a key, a symbol of access and knowledge, yet she is the guardian of mysteries that can never be fully unlocked. She is followed by baying hounds, whose cries can signal both a protective warning and a terrifying omen. This duality is not a contradiction. It is the very essence of her being. She embodies the uncomfortable truth that light requires darkness, knowledge requires mystery, and life is defined by its boundary with death. In the earliest surviving texts, like Hesiod's Theogony, Hecate is presented with extraordinary reverence. A Titan by birth, she was a remnant of the old order, yet the new king, Zeus, did not diminish her power. Instead, he honoured her above all others, affirming her ancient rights to a share of dominion over the earth, the sea, and the starry heavens. This unique status points to a deep-seated respect for the forces she represented, forces so fundamental that even the new Olympian regime could not, or would not, dare to challenge them. As we embark on this journey tonight, we must peel back the layers of later interpretations that painted her as a one-dimensional hag of black magic. We will travel back to her pre-Olympian roots, examine the profound symbolism of her tools, and walk with her through the moonlit landscape of ancient Greece. We will see her not as an object of fear, but as a silent, powerful witness to all of life's crucial turning points. Let the world outside fade away, and allow your mind to settle. The path into Hecate's realm is not one of action, but of quiet contemplation. Let us begin. To truly comprehend the nature of any deity, we must look to their origins, to the cosmic soil from which they sprang. For the Olympians, their lineage is a well-documented drama of power, ambition, and rebellion, all revolving around the ascendant figure of Zeus. But to find Hecate's roots, we must dig deeper, back into an older, more primordial layer of myth. We must travel to a time before the reign of the Olympians was secure, to the era of the Titans, those raw and immense forces that first shaped the world. Hecate is not an Olympian. She is a Titan, a daughter of the old world, and this single fact is the first key to unlocking the mystery of her being. Her parentage is recorded most famously by the poet Hesiod in his Theogony, the foundational text of Greek divine genealogy. He tells us that Hecate is the daughter of two second-generation Titans, Perses and Asteria. These are not names that command the same immediate recognition as Cronus or Rhea, yet their meanings provide a profound insight into the dual nature of their child. Let us consider them each in turn. Her father was Perses, a name that translates to the destroyer or the slayer. He was a son of the Titans Crius and Eurybia, and his very name evokes a sense of destructive, overwhelming power. He represents ruin, the force that unmakes and lays waste. In the lineage of the gods, Perses is a figure of pure, unadulterated might, a remnant of the chaotic and violent power that characterized the early cosmos before the establishment of Olympian order. From her father, Hecate inherits her connection to awe-inspiring, formidable power, the capacity for wrath, the command over forces that can dismantle and overwhelm. This is the aspect of Hecate that inspires caution and fear, the raw strength that makes her a goddess one appeases rather than casually invokes. Her mother, however, was Asteria, and her story is one of light, night, and prophecy. Asteria, whose name means the starry one, or of the stars, was the sister of Leto. This makes Hecate the cousin of two of the most radiant Olympians, Apollo, the god of the sun and prophecy, and Artemis, the goddess of the moon and the hunt. Asteria's own myth is a poignant one. She was pursued by the relentless Zeus, but rather than submit to him, she transformed herself into a quail and flung herself into the Aegean Sea. There she became the wandering island of Ortygia, the Isle of Quails, which later became the sacred, fixed island of Delost, very birthplace of her niece and nephew, Apollo and Artemis. From her mother, Asteria, Hecate inherits a completely different set of qualities. She draws her lineage from the celestial, from the vast, dark canopy of the night sky, dotted with the cold, distant light of stars. Asteria represents prophecy, divination, and the nocturnal mysteries. She is a figure of divine light, not the blinding, direct light of the sun, but the ethereal, guiding light of the stars, and, by extension, the moon. This maternal line connects Hecate to illumination, guidance, and the deep, intuitive knowledge that one can only find in the quiet of the night. Here, then, lies the riddle of Hecate's birth. She is the offspring of a union between two seemingly opposite forces, the unmaking, destructive power of Perses and the starry, prophetic light of Asteria. She is born of destruction and illumination, of ruin and revelation. This is not a contradiction to be resolved. It is the very essence of her divine function. She is the living embodiment of this paradox. She is the torch that illuminates the path, but the path itself may lead through devastation. She is the key that unlocks hidden knowledge, but that knowledge may be terrifying. She is a bridge between the chthonic, destructive forces of the old world and the celestial, ordered light of the new. Her status as a Titan places her in a unique and precarious position. The Titans were the generation of gods overthrown by Zeus and his siblings in the Great War, the Titanomachy. Most of the male Titans who fought against Zeus were cast into the eternal prison of Tartarus, a dark pit deep within the earth. Many other Titanesses were relegated to obscurity. Yet Hecate, a full-blooded Titan, not only survived the fall of her kin, but, as we shall see, thrived under the new regime. The myths are conspicuously silent about her role during the Titanomachy. She is not listed among those who fought against Zeus, nor among those who allied with him. True to her nature, she seems to have occupied a liminal space, a neutral ground between the warring factions. Some scholars even suggest that the worship of Hecate predates the arrival of the Greeks in the Aegean, that she was originally a powerful, all-encompassing goddess from Anatolia, specifically the region of Caria, where her worship remained most prominent for centuries. In this view, she was not so much born into the Greek pantheon as she was adopted into it, a foreign and ancient deity whose power was so self-evident that she had to be given a place of honour. This would further explain her otherness, her distinct character that never fully assimilates with the family squabbles and political manoeuvring of the Olympians. She remains an outsider, an honoured elder from a time long past. Therefore, when we speak of Hecate's origins, we are speaking of something far more ancient and elemental than the stories of Olympus. We are speaking of a power born from the fabric of the cosmos itself, a synthesis of the dark, destructive impulse and the serene, guiding light of the night sky. She is a living link to the age of Titans, a walking, breathing relic of a world that was carrying its primal wisdom and its untamed power into the new age of gods and men. This unique heritage, this balancing of light and shadow in her very blood, is what allowed her to stand alone, respected and feared by all, including the new king of the gods himself. In the aftermath of any great war, there are victors and there are vanquished. The Titanomachy, the decade-long war between the Titans and the Olympians, was no exception. When the clang of divine war at last fell silent and the smoke of cosmic battle cleared, Zeus stood as the undisputed victor, the new sovereign of the universe. His first and most pressing task was to establish his new order, a process that involved rewarding his allies and dealing with his defeated enemies. The fate of the male Titans who had opposed him was unequivocal and grim. They were bound in unbreakable chains and cast into the deep, dark abyss of Tartarus, a prison as far beneath the earth as the earth is beneath the heavens. The old world was overthrown, its rulers imprisoned, and their power systematically dismantled. And yet, in this sweeping, and often ruthless consolidation of power, there is one glaring, magnificent exception. That exception is Hecate. A Titaness by blood, a child of the very generation Zeus had just vanquished. She was not imprisoned, she was not diminished, she was not even relegated to a minor, forgotten role. Instead, she was honoured. This is not a footnote in the myths. It is a central and deeply perplexing feature of her story. To understand why, we must turn again to the poet Hesiod, who, in his Theogony, interrupts his grand catalogue of divine births to offer what is essentially a hymn of praise to Hecate. Hesiod tells us that Zeus, the son of Cronus, honoured her above all others. This is a stunning statement. Zeus, who jealously guarded his newfound authority, who would later punish any challenge to his supremacy with swift and terrible force, chose to single out this daughter of the old regime for special reverence. The poet makes it clear that this was not a new grant of power, but an affirmation of her ancient rights. Zeus did not give her dominion. He allowed her to keep the dominion she already possessed. Hesiod writes that she retained her share of all the honours that the Titans had held in the beginning. She was to have a portion of the earth, a portion of the unharvested sea, and a portion of the starry heavens. What does this mean in practical terms? It does not mean she ruled these realms in the way Poseidon ruled the waves, or Zeus the sky. Her power was more subtle, more pervasive, and more personal. It meant that a mortal who prayed to Hecate with a sincere heart could receive her blessing in any endeavour. A fisherman could pray to her for a bountiful catch, and she could grant it. A warrior could ask for victory in battle, and she could bestow it. A speaker in the assembly could seek her favour for persuasive speech, and she could place wisdom upon his tongue. A farmer could look to her for the fertility of his herds and fields. She was a bestower of wealth, glory, and success to those whom she favoured. She was, in Hesiod's portrayal, a universal benefactor, an intermediary whose influence cut across the jurisdictions of all other gods. The fundamental question, then, is why? Why would Zeus, the great strategist, allow such a powerful and independent agent to operate within his newly won cosmos? The myths do not give a single, explicit answer, so we are left to explore the quiet implications, to read between the lines of the ancient verses. One possible reason is pure pragmatism. Zeus was a new king. His rule was not yet absolute, and the memory of the old order was still fresh. By honouring a respected and powerful Titaness like Hecate, he was sending a clear message. He was not merely a tyrant bent on destroying the past, but a wise ruler who recognised and respected ancient, fundamental laws. It was a masterful political act, a gesture of reconciliation that could help to legitimise his reign and pacify any remaining loyalists to the old regime. He was demonstrating that his new world had a place for the old wisdom, provided it did not challenge his authority. Another, deeper reason may lie in the very nature of Hecate's power. Zeus could conquer physical realms and defeat divine armies with his thunderbolts. But Hecate's domain was that of the threshold, the choice, the mystery. Her power was in magic, in the night, in the passages between worlds. These are not things that can be struck down by lightning or bound in chains. They are fundamental, abstract forces woven into the fabric of existence. Zeus, in his supreme wisdom, may have recognized that Hecate's power did not compete with his own. It complemented it. While he governed the grand, visible order of the cosmos, she governed the invisible, transitional spaces that held it all together. To challenge her would be like challenging the concept of a doorway or the existence of a shadow, a pointless and perhaps impossible endeavour. He did not honour her out of weakness, but out of a profound understanding of the limits of his own kind of power. Finally, we can consider the interpretation that Hecate was an ancient foreign goddess, perhaps from Caria in Anatolia, who was absorbed into the Greek pantheon. Her worship may have been so old and so deeply entrenched that the Greek mythmakers could not simply erase her. The narrative of Zeus honouring her becomes a brilliant mythological solution to an anthropological reality. It explains why this powerful, independent goddess exists alongside the Olympians, integrating her into their world while acknowledging her distinct and pre-existing stature. Whatever the precise reason, the result is the same. Hecate stands alone, a quiet, unshakable pillar connecting the age of Titans to the age of Olympians. She is not Zeus's subject, nor his rival. She is a coexisting power, a testament to the fact that even in a world governed by a new king, there are older laws and more ancient mysteries that must be respected. This singular honour, granted by the king of the gods, solidifies her status as a deity of immense and unique importance, a goddess whose influence permeates every corner of the world, from the deepest sea to the highest heaven. The gods of antiquity do not present themselves to the world as abstract concepts. They are known through their stories, their actions, and, most immediately, through their sacred symbols. These are not mere decorations or accessories. They are a visual language, a shorthand for a deity's essential nature and sphere of influence. For Hecate, a goddess defined by ambiguity and the unseen, her iconography is particularly vital. It provides tangible anchors in the vast, shadowy sea of her domain. Three symbols, more than any others, are inextricably linked to her: a pair of torches, a key, and a hound. To decode these symbols is to gain a deeper, more intimate understanding of her function in the cosmic order. Let us first consider the torches. Often, Hecate is depicted holding two, one in each hand. In the most practical sense, their purpose is illumination. Hecate is a goddess of the night, a wanderer on paths unlit by the sun. Her torches cut through the physical darkness, lighting the way for herself and for those she chooses to guide. At a lonely, moonless crossroads, the flickering, resinous light of a torch is the difference between a safe passage and a stumble into the unknown. It is a symbol of guidance, of clarity in the midst of obscurity. This light is not the all-encompassing, clarifying brilliance of Apollo's sun, which banishes all shadows. It is a contained, personal, and mobile lighter, small circle of visibility in an ocean of darkness, a perfect metaphor for her limited but crucial interventions in the lives of mortals. But the light of her torches extends far beyond the physical. It represents spiritual and intellectual illumination. Hecate is a keeper of secrets, a repository of ancient and hidden knowledge. Her torchlight does not just reveal the path ahead, it reveals hidden truths. It is the light of epiphany, the sudden flash of understanding that solves a riddle or clarifies a difficult choice. This symbolic light connects her to her mother, Asteria, the starry one. It is the light of wisdom, but a chthonic, earthen wisdom, not a celestial, Olympian one. Furthermore, this light embodies her fundamental duality. A torch can reveal a safe haven, a clear path, a friendly face, but it can also illuminate what the darkness mercifully conceals: the lurking predator, the treacherous cliff edge, the face of a ghost. The knowledge she offers can be a blessing or a curse. To accept her light is to accept the full spectrum of what it might reveal. The most famous story of her torches comes from the myth of Persephone's abduction. When the young goddess of spring was stolen away into the underworld by Hades, her mother, Demeter, wandered the earth in desperate search. For 9 days and 9 nights, she searched without rest, food, or drink. It was Hecate, and only Hecate, who heard Persephone's faint cry from her cave. And it was Hecate who met Demeter, holding her twin torches aloft, to light the elder goddess's path in the night and to confirm what she had heard. Later, when the ordeal was resolved, Hecate became Persephone's permanent guide and companion on her annual journeys to and from the underworld, lighting the dark passage with her flames. Here, the torches are not just a tool, but an emblem of compassion, empathy, and steadfast guidance in the bleakest of circumstances. Next, we turn to the key. In some depictions, Hecate holds a large, often bronze or iron, key. Like the torches, the key has both a literal and a profound metaphorical meaning. Literally, it is the key to a door, a gate, a chest. As a guardian of thresholds, Hecate is the keeper of all keys. She is the one who secures the home at night. Her presence at the doorway, a magical lock against evil. She is the guardian of the city gates, holding the key that separates the ordered world of civilization from the wild chaos outside. Metaphorically, the key's significance deepens immensely. It is the key to the mysteries. It unlocks esoteric knowledge, magical formulae, and the secrets of divination. This connects directly to her role as the patroness of witches like Circe and Medea, who looked to her for access to power that was locked away from ordinary mortals. To hold the key is to be a gatekeeper of knowledge. But most importantly, Hecate holds the key to the gates that separate the realms of existence. She holds the key to the underworld. While Hermes may act as the primary psychopomp, escorting souls, Hecate holds the ultimate access. She can unlock the gates for the dead to enter, and, in some traditions, for them to return. This makes her a figure of immense power, a controller of the ultimate boundary between life and death. The cold iron weight of the key in her hand is a symbol of her absolute authority over passage and transition. Finally, we have the hound, or more often, a pair of black hounds that form her retinue. The dog in ancient Greece was itself a liminal creature. It was a domesticated animal, a companion to humanity, but it retained its wild pack instincts. It was a hunter, a creature of the night, and its baying was a sound that could be both comforting and eerie. Black dogs, in particular, were associated with the underworld, the most famous of course being Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades. Hecate's hounds are Cerberus's terrestrial counterparts. Her dogs are her companions, guardians, and messengers. As she walks the earth at night, they travel with her, their keen senses piercing the darkness. A sudden, unexplained bark in the night, the sight of a black dog at a crossroads, these were taken as sure signs of Hecate's imminent presence. They are her protectors, warding off hostile spirits, but they are also agents of her power, sometimes sent to harry her enemies. In rituals, dogs were the animal most commonly sacrificed to her, a practice that cemented the link between her chthonic nature and this faithful, boundary-walking creature. The hounds represent the instinctual, the untamed, the protective, and the slightly feral aspect of her divinity. They are the living embodiment of the chill one feels when walking alone on a dark road. Together, these three symbols form a complete portrait of her domain. The torches illuminate the path, whether physical or spiritual. The key unlocks the gates that stand upon that path, and the hound guards the traveller who dares to walk it. They are the tools of a goddess who does not rule a kingdom, but who presides over the journey itself, a journey through darkness, toward knowledge, across the most profound boundaries of existence. Of all the enigmatic qualities that define Hecate, none is more central or more subject to interpretation than her triplicity. She is frequently invoked and depicted as a threefold goddess, a being of three forms or three faces. This threeness is not a simple numerical attribute. It is a profound philosophical concept that encapsulates the very essence of her domain. The riddle of her triple form is not a question with a single answer, but rather a prism through which we can view the many facets of her power. It is an idea that evolved over centuries, beginning as a concept of cosmic dominion and later transforming into a powerful visual and symbolic representation of life, time, and magic. The earliest roots of her triplicity lie in that same hymn of praise from Hesiod we have already explored. When Zeus honoured Hecate, he affirmed her share of power in three distinct realms: the earth, the sea, and the starry heavens. This was her original tripartite nature, not a physical form, but a tripartite sphere of influence. She was not the ruler of any single realm, but a presence whose favour could be felt across all of them. A farmer tilling the soil, the earth, a sailor casting his nets, the sea, and an astronomer reading the portents of the stars, the heavens, could all, in theory, seek and receive her blessing. This made her a goddess of profound universality, a power that transcended the neat jurisdictional boundaries that defined the other Olympians. Her threeness was initially a measure of her cosmic scope. As centuries passed, this conceptual triplicity began to take on a physical, visual form. In art and worship, particularly from the 5th century BC onwards, Hecate came to be depicted as three identical female figures standing back to back, usually around a central column. This iconic statue was known as a Hecateon. These were not grand statues for temples, but functional, apotropaic images placed at a specific and sacred location. The three-way crossroads, known in Latin as a trivium. The genius of this design was both practical and deeply symbolic. Placed at the intersection of three roads, the Hecatean could gaze down all three paths simultaneously. Her silent, stone eyes watched over every approach, every departure, every choice a traveller might make. Imagine standing before such a statue. You have arrived at a point of decision. Three paths stretch before you into the unknown, and there, at the very nexus of your choice, stands the goddess, embodied as a trinity. She sees where you have come from, and she sees the potential of where you might go. She is the silent witness to the moment of transition. In this form, she is the ultimate guardian of the crossroads, her triple nature, a literal reflection of her sacred space. Offerings, such as the Hecate supper we will later discuss, were left at the feet of these statues, an acknowledgement of her constant, all-seeing vigil over the liminal spaces of the world. From this visual representation, her triplicity evolved further, absorbing deeper layers of symbolic meaning. As a goddess associated with the passage of time and the mysteries of life and death, her three forms came to be associated with the three stages of the female life cycle: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. While this specific triad is more heavily emphasized in modern paganism, its roots are ancient. This interpretation often links her with two other powerful goddesses in a divine trinity. She was seen as the crone, the wise, aged face of the divine feminine, alongside Persephone as the maiden, Kore, and Demeter as the mother. Together, they represent the complete cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Persephone is the innocent spring, Demeter is the fertile summer, and Hecate is the wise, withdrawn autumn, and the dark introspection of winter, holding the knowledge of all that has passed and all that is yet to be born again. This temporal triplicity is also mirrored in the phases of the moon, a celestial body with which Hecate, a nocturnal goddess, has a deep and abiding connection. In this schema, the three faces of the goddess are mapped onto the lunar cycle. The maiden is the waxing moon, full of new potential and growing light, often associated with the huntress goddess Artemis. The mother is the full moon, radiant and life-giving, represented by the Titaness Selene. And Hecate is the waning and dark moon, the time of introspection, magic, and mystery crone phase, when the light has withdrawn to gather strength for a new cycle. Therefore, the riddle of Hecate's triple form has no single solution, because it is all of these things at once. She is triple in her cosmic dominion over earth, sea, and sky. She is triple in her physical manifestation at the crossroads, watching all paths. And she is triple in her symbolic representation of the cycles of life and time. She is the past, present, and future. She is birth, life, and death. She is the choice made, the path taken, and the destination reached. Her triplicity is the ultimate expression of her role as a goddess of boundaries and connections. She is not one thing, but the sacred space between three things, the point where different realities meet and intersect. It is this complex, layered triplicity that makes her one of the most intellectually and spiritually compelling figures in the entire Greek pantheon, a goddess whose form is a map of the universe itself. We have explored Hecate's ancient lineage, her honoured place in the cosmos, her sacred symbols, and the riddle of her triple form. Now we must travel to the heart of her domain, to the physical space that is the most potent and perfect metaphor for her entire existence, the crossroads. More than any temple of marble or gold, the simple earthen intersection of three paths is Hecate's truest sanctuary. It is here that her power is most tangible, her presence most keenly felt, and her purpose most clearly understood. To stand at a crossroads in the ancient world was to stand in a place charged with supernatural significance, a place where the veil between worlds was thin and where every decision was watched by the silent goddess of transition. Let us first strip away our modern understanding of a crossroads, a place of traffic lights, signs, and ordered movement. In the ancient world, a crossroads, or trivium, was often a desolate and lonely place. It was the point where a known road might splinter into unfamiliar tracks, leading into dark forests, over barren hills, or towards distant, unseen villages. It was a place of inherent vulnerability. Here, a traveller was most at risk of losing their way. It was a natural haunt for bandits, a place where one might encounter wild animals, or simply be overcome by the vast, intimidating emptiness of the landscape. The crossroads was a place of profound uncertainty and potential peril. It is precisely because of this danger and uncertainty that it became sacred to Hecate. She is not a goddess of the safe, straight road, but of the moment of divergence. Her triple-formed statues, the Hecatea, were placed at these intersections as a form of divine protection. They were apotropaic, meant to ward off evil. By acknowledging Hecate at this critical juncture, a traveller was placing themselves under the protection of the one being who was truly at home in this liminal space. The three faces of the statue, gazing down each path, symbolised her omniscience in this specific context. Nothing that happened at the crossroads escaped her notice. She saw the weary traveller, the lurking thief, the lost soul. She was the unseen sentinel, her presence a source of both comfort and awe. But the physical crossroads is merely the anchor for a much deeper, more powerful metaphor. The crossroads represents the moment of choice. Every significant decision in a person's life is a metaphorical crossroads. The youth stands at the intersection of childhood and adulthood. A person stands at the crossroads of choosing a partner, a profession, or a moral path. Hecate does not make the choice for you. She is not a goddess of overt intervention in the manner of Athena advising a hero. Instead, she embodies the sacred and terrifying gravity of the moment of choice itself. She is the silent witness to your deliberation. Her presence reminds you that every path taken means another path is abandoned, and that every choice has consequences that will ripple through the fabric of your fate. This connects her deeply to the concept of fate, or Moira, which was a powerful force in the Greek worldview. While the Moirai, the three fates, were the ones who spun, measured, and cut the thread of life, Hecate was the goddess who presided over the points where that thread could be rerouted. The crossroads is where destiny is not just a straight line, but a map of possibilities. To invoke Hecate at such a time was to seek clarity, to ask for the wisdom, to see the paths for what they truly were, and to find the courage to step forward. She holds the torch not to light one correct path, but to illuminate all options, forcing the individual to confront the full weight of their own agency. Furthermore, Her domain extends to social and spiritual crossroads. The main gate of a city is a crossroads between the order of civilization and the chaos of the wilderness. Hecate was the guardian of this threshold. The front door of a home is a crossroads between the private, sacred space of the family and the public, unpredictable world outside. Small shrines to Hecate were placed here to protect the home from malevolent spirits and ill fortune. She stands at the boundary, a gatekeeper between worlds. This role as guardian of transitions also explains her connection to childbirth and death. Birth is the soul's crossing of the threshold from the unseen world into the world of the living. Death is the final crossroads, where the path of life ends and the journey into the underworld begins. Hecate, with her torch and key, is present at both, ensuring a safe passage. She is the midwife of both the beginning and the end of life. The offerings left for her at these crossroads, which we will explore in more detail later, were not extravagant sacrifices of wealth, but humble, personal acknowledgements. They were often scraps of food left at the dark of the moon, a meal known as Hecate's supper. This was a way of feeding her and her attendant spirits, of appeasing the powers of the night, and of ritually cleansing one's household of negativity, leaving it at the boundary for Hecate to handle. It was an intimate, almost fearful act of respect for the goddess who walked the borders of one's world. Thus, the crossroads is the ultimate key to understanding Hecate. It is a physical place, a psychological state, a spiritual juncture, and a social boundary. It is the place where past, present, and future converge. It is where potential becomes reality. Hecate, in her triple form, does not simply stand at the crossroads. In a profound sense, she is the crossroadser living nexus of choice, transition, and fate, a silent, eternal guardian of all the paths we walk. The world of the ancient Greeks was one of stark contrasts, none more profound than the division between day and night. The day belonged to Apollo, to reason, to the bustling life of the agora and the gymnasium. It was a realm of clarity, order, and visible reality. But when the sun god drove his chariot below the horizon, the world transformed. The night was a different kingdom entirely. It was a time of quiet, of dreams, of shadows that blurred the sharp edges of the world. It was a time when the rational mind gave way to the intuitive, when the veil between the world of the living and the world of spirits grew thin and permeable. This nocturnal realm, with all its mystery and its magic, was not an empty void. It had its own sovereign, a silent wanderer whose power waxed as the suns waned. This was Hecate, and her relationship with the night was not one of mere association, but of a deep and secret covenant. Her connection to the nocturnal world is seeded in her very lineage. Her mother, Asteria, was the starry one, a goddess of the night sky's prophetic canvas. Her cousins were Apollo, the sun, and Artemis, the huntress, who was one of Greece's most prominent lunar deities. While Artemis was often associated with the bright, crescent or waxing moon, the moon of the hunt, of wild places, and of youthful independence, Hecate's affinity was for its more mysterious and withdrawn phases. Her power was most potent during the darkest nights, especially the night of the new moon, a time known as the Deipnon. This was when the moon was invisible, a sliver of blackness in the sky, a pause between the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next. This deep lunar connection found its most powerful expression in the later theological concept of a triple goddess trinity, where three distinct deities were seen as different faces of a single great goddess mapped onto the phases of the moon. In this trinity, the huntress Artemis represented the waxing moon, the maiden, full of youthful energy and growing light, the Titaness Selene, often depicted with a full lunar disk on her brow, embodied the luminous, nurturing power of the full moon, the mother. And Hecate, in this schema, was unequivocally the crone, the goddess of the waning and dark moon. To be the goddess of the dark moon was a role of immense significance. This was not a time of absence, but of profound potential. It was a time for introspection, for secrets, for magic. When the moon's light was withdrawn from the world, it was believed that other, more subtle energies could come to the fore. It was the perfect time for divination, for casting spells, for communing with the spirits of the dead. The darkness was a canvas upon which the unseen could be made visible to those who knew how to look. Hecate's covenant with the night was a pact to guard these mysteries, to preside over the magic that flourished in the moon's absence. She was the mistress of the potent creative darkness from which new light would eventually be born. This role as a nocturnal sovereign is captured in her epithet as the moonlit wanderer. She was not a static deity, fixed in a temple. She was a goddess in motion. The ancient Greeks envisioned her roaming the earth on these dark nights, never alone. Her procession was a ghostly and awe-inspiring one. Leading the way were her black hounds, their baying a chilling sound that carried on the night air, a warning of her approach. Behind her followed a retinue of restless spirits, the ghosts of the unburied, or those who had died violently, a spectral entourage known as the nyctopolloi, or night wanderers. She might also be accompanied by more terrifying spectres, such as the imprisoned. These were monstrous, shape-shifting demonic spirits, often depicted with one leg of bronze and one leg of a donkey. They were said to ambush lone travellers, luring them with a beautiful illusion before revealing their true frightful form. Hecate was their mistress. She did not necessarily command them to do evil, but they were a part of her domain, a part of the inherent danger of the night that she presided over. Her wandering was a procession of all the night's terrors and mysteries made manifest. To encounter Hecate's train was to come face to face with the raw, untamed, and supernatural reality of the darkness. Her journey was not aimless. As she wandered through the sleeping world, past lonely farmsteads, through silent forests, and especially at the crossroads, she was performing her sacred duty. She was the eternal vigil, the guardian who watched over the world during its most vulnerable hours. Her twin torches, which we have already discussed, were her constant companions on these nightly travels, their small flames a beacon of guidance and a stark contrast to the overwhelming dark. She was the witness to all that happened under the cloak of night. The secret meetings, the quiet sorrows, the hatching of plots, the birth of nocturnal creatures. Her covenant, then, was this. The night gave her its power, its mystery, and its authority over the unseen. In return, she became its guardian, its personification, its silent, wandering queen. She did not seek to conquer the darkness, but to inhabit it, to understand it, and to serve as the intermediary for those mortals brave or desperate enough to seek knowledge and power within its embrace. In the vast library of Greek myth, few stories are as poignant or as foundational as the abduction of Persephone. It is a tale that explains the turning of the seasons, the sorrow of a mother's loss, and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. It is the charter myth of the Eleusinian mysteries, one of the most sacred and secret religious rites of the ancient world. At its heart are three titanic figures: Hades, the grim king of the underworld; Demeter, the grieving mother and goddess of the harvest; and Persephone, the innocent maiden transformed into a formidable queen. But hovering at the edges of this epic drama, playing a role that is quiet yet absolutely crucial, is Hecate. It is in this myth that her function as a compassionate guide, a psychopomp, is most beautifully and powerfully illustrated. Let us picture the scene as the Homeric hymn to Demeter paints it for us. The world is in a state of perpetual spring. Persephone, the Curea or maiden, is at play in a soft meadow with the daughters of Oceanus. The air is warm, and the ground is jewelled with flowers, roses, crocuses, fragrant violets, and irises. At the behest of Zeus, and as a favour to Hades, the earth goddess Gaia brings forth a special flower, the narcissus, a bloom of such hypnotic beauty and intoxicating scent that it dazzles the young goddess. As Persephone reaches out, her innocent hand eager to pluck this marvel, the world breaks. The wide-pathed earth yawns open. From the chasm, a sound of thunder, and then the dreadful emergence of Hades, lord of the many, in his golden chariot, drawn by immortal black horses. He seizes the screaming Persephone, pulling her into the chariot. Her cries are a mixture of terror and a desperate invocation of her father, Zeus. But Zeus, who has sanctioned this union, does not answer. The ground closes as quickly as it opened, swallowing the chariot, the god, and the maiden, leaving behind only the scent of Narcissus and a silence that is heavier than any sound. The hymn tells us that no one, neither immortal god nor mortal human, heard her voice save two. The first was Helios, the all-seeing sun, who from his high celestial path witnesses everything that happens upon the earth. The second was Hecate. She was not on Olympus, nor in the meadow. She was, as is her nature, in a place apart. The hymn says she heard the cry from her cave. This detail is significant. A cave is a threshold, a mouth in the earth, a natural boundary between the sunlit world above and the dark chthonic realms below. It is a place of introspection and mystery. From this liminal space, Hecate, the goddess of boundaries, was the only other being to register the sound of a threshold being violently crossed. She heard the sound of a soul being pulled from one world into another. What follows is one of the most moving passages in Greek literature. Demeter's frantic search. Tearing the veil from her head and flinging off her dark cloak, the goddess of the harvest begins a 9-day journey of pure, unadulterated grief. With a flaming torch in each hand, she wanders the earth, refusing to eat ambrosia or drink nectar, her heart pierced with sorrow. Her torches are not for guidance. They are torches of rage and despair, a burning manifestation of her anguish. But her search is fruitless. The world remains silent. On the dawn of the 10th day, a figure approaches the grieving mother. It is Hecate. She too is holding a light in her handshare, own familiar torches. But her light is different. It is not the fire of grief, but the steady flame of knowledge and guidance. She does not have the full answer, for she did not see the event, but she offers what she has. She speaks to Demeter, confirming that she heard the cry of Persephone being seized, though she could not see the perpetrator. Her intervention is the first crack of light in Demeter's all-consuming darkness. It is the first piece of corroborating evidence, the first confirmation that she is not mad with grief, that her daughter's disappearance was real. Hecate then does something remarkable. She does not simply deliver her message and retreat to her cave. She joins Demeter, becoming her companion in the search. Together, with Hecate's torches lighting the way, they go to confront Helios, the one being who could provide the full, unvarnished truth. It is Hecate who facilitates this crucial meeting. She acts as a guide, a supportive presence, leading the distraught mother towards the source of clarity. After the truth is revealed and the cosmic bargain is struck, Persephone to spend a portion of the year in the underworld, and a portion with her mother Hecate's role is not finished. It is cemented for eternity. The hymn concludes by stating that, from that day forward, the revered Hecate became Persephone's chief attendant and companion. Imagine what this means. Twice a year, for all of time, Persephone must make the perilous journey between the world of the living and the land of the dead. It is a terrifying transition, a crossing of the ultimate boundary, and it is Hecate, with her twin torches held high, who leads her. She becomes Persephone's psychopomp, her sole guide. Her light illuminates the dark, damp passages of the underworld, making the journey not one of terror, but a familiar and guided ritual. She is the compassionate chaperone, the steadfast guardian who ensures the queen of the underworld can safely pass between her two homes, her two identities. In this story, Hecate is not a figure of fear or dark magic. She is empathy incarnate. She is the one who hears the cry when others are deaf, the one who brings light when all is dark, and the one who offers to walk with you through the valley of the shadow of death. Her torches are the light of compassion, and her presence is the promise that no one, not even a queen of the dead, has to make the journey alone. A deity's power and character are often reflected in the company they keep. While Zeus is surrounded by the glorious court of Olympians and the swift messenger Iris, Hecate's entourage is of a distinctly different nature. It is a procession born of the night, a retinue of shadows that follows in her wake as she makes her nocturnal journeys across the land. This spectral assembly is not merely for dramatic effect. It is a manifestation of her core domains, her authority over the restless dead, her command over the uncanny and monstrous, and her deep bond with creatures that walk the line between the wild and the civilized. Her companions are the baying hound, the mournful ghost, and the terrifying Empusa, and each tells a part of her story. First and most constant are her hounds. As we have touched upon, the dog in the ancient world was a liminal creature, and its connection to Hecate is profound. Her hounds are almost always described as being black, the colour of night, the earth, and the underworld. They are not pets in the modern sense. They are extensions of her will and senses. Their keen hearing can pick up the whisper of a spell on the wind. Their sharp eyes can pierce the deepest gloom. Their powerful sense of smell can track a lost soul or a fleeing spirit. When the ancient Greeks heard the unexplained howling of dogs in the dead of night, it was not merely a random occurrence. It was often interpreted as a sign that the dogs of Hecate were near, and therefore so was the goddess herself. These hounds served multiple functions. They were her guardians, forming a protective circle around her as she walked the often perilous paths of the night. They were her heralds, their baying announcing her arrival at a crossroads, warning mortals to stay inside or to show proper reverence. But they could also be agents of her wrath. In some tales, she could set her hounds upon those who offended her, or who desecrated her sacred spaces, a terrifying and spectral hunt from which there was little hope of escape. The sacrifice of dogs, particularly black puppies, at her crossroad shrines, was a way of honouring this connection, and appeasing the chthonic power she and her animal companions embodied. The hounds represent her untamed, instinctual, and fiercely protective nature. Following behind the hounds, often visible only to those with second sight or to other animals, was her train of ghosts. Hecate's role as a psychopomp and keeper of the keys to the underworld gave her a unique authority over the spirits of the dead. Specifically, she was the mistress of the restless dead, the Aroi, those who had died untimely or violent deaths, and the Ataphoi, those who had not received proper burial rites. According to Greek belief, these souls could not find peace and were trapped between worlds, forced to wander the earth. Hecate was their shepherdess. Her nightly procession swept up these mournful, wandering spirits. To the common person, this was a terrifying, thought-a-spectral parade of ghosts, led by their grim queen. To encounter this train was considered a sign of madness or impending doom. People would perform rituals and leave offerings to ensure that Hecate and her restless host would pass their homes by without causing harm. Yet, there is another way to view this. Hecate was not necessarily leading them on a mission of terror. She was gathering the lost, the forgotten, and the grieving. In her domain, even these restless souls had a place. She gave them a queen to follow, a purpose to their wandering. She was the only one who did not shun them, the only one who could command them. Her spectral retinue was a testament to her dominion over the most desolate and feared of all thresholds, the one between a peaceful death and an eternal, restless existence. Finally, we encounter the most overtly monstrous of her followers, the Empusei. These were terrifying, shape-shifting demons, almost always female, who were explicitly named as servants of Hecate. An Empusa, whose name can be translated as one-footed, was often described as having a bizarre and frightful appearance, such as one leg made of bronze and the other the leg of a donkey. This unnatural, limping gait marked them as creatures that defied the natural order. Their primary method of operation was deception. An Empusa could transform herself into a stunningly beautiful woman to lure a young man travelling alone at night. She might also take the form of a gentle dog or a cow to get close to her prey. Once the victim was seduced, and his guard was down, the Empusa would reveal her true, monstrous form and attack, drinking his blood and sometimes even eating his flesh. They were, in essence, a type of Greek vampire or succubus, a personification of the fatal dangers of lust, and the terrifying truth that appearances can be deceiving, especially in the dark. That these fearsome creatures were part of Hecate's retinue speaks to the most dangerous aspect of her power. She held sway not just over ghosts, but over things that were actively malevolent. As the goddess of witchcraft and the hidden arts, her domain included the creation and command of such beings. This does not mean Hecate herself was evil, but it demonstrates that her power was amoral. It encompassed the full spectrum of the supernatural, from the mournfully lost to the actively predatory. To be the queen of the night meant ruling over all of its inhabitants, including the most monstrous. Together, this retinue of shadows paints a chilling but complete picture. The loyal hounds, the sad ghosts, the terrifying demons, they are all part of her world. They represent instinct, sorrow, and terror. To walk with Hecate was to walk at the head of a procession that embodied all the hidden fears and supernatural realities of the ancient world. Her power was not just in her own being, but in the legion of spectral, shadowy entities that answered her call and followed in her silent, moonlit wake. As Hecate's image evolved through the centuries, one aspect of her domain grew to overshadow almost all others: her role as the ultimate source and patroness of magic, or pharmakia. While her origins depict a respected titaness and a universal benefactor, by the time of the great Greek tragedies and epic poems, her name had become inextricably linked with the hidden arts. She was the divine wellspring from which the most powerful sorceresses of myth drew their power. To understand the magic of figures like Circe and Medea is to understand that they were not self-made practitioners. They were priestesses, acolytes, and granddaughters in spirit to the great goddess of witchcraft, Hecate. The Greek term for this magic, pharmakia, is wonderfully complex. It gives us our modern word, pharmacy, and at its root it refers to the use of drugs, herbs, and potions. This was the core of a witch's craft, a deep, esoteric knowledge of botany, toxicology, and the hidden properties of plants and minerals. A pharmakis, or sorceress, was a master of potions that could heal, but also potions that could harm, create illusions, induce madness, or transform a man into a beast. This art was not a parlour trick. It was a potent and feared power that operated outside the normal rules of society and religion. It was a chthonic science, its secrets whispered from the earth itself, and Hecate was its keeper. The first great sorceress we meet in the Greek canon is Circe, the enchantress of the island of Aeaea, who famously turns Odysseus's men into swine. In Homer's Odyssey, her lineage is tied to the sun god Helios, making her a cousin to Hecate. However, in later traditions, this connection is made much more explicit. The poet Apollonius of Rhodes, in his Argonautica, states plainly that Circe's power derives from her worship of Hecate. Her island is not just a place of exile, it is a living laboratory for Hecate's arts. When Odysseus and his men arrive, they find a place where nature itself is warped and controlled by magic. Tame lions and wolves former men transformed by her potions, fawn upon the newcomers, their wildness subdued by an unnatural enchantment. This is Hecate's power in action. Circe's magica, use of a wand, her incantations, her mastery of transformative potionsis, a direct application of the secret knowledge bestowed upon her by the goddess of witchcraft. An even more potent and terrifying practitioner of Hecate's arts is Circe's own niece, Medea of Colchis. Medea is perhaps the archetypal witch in all of Western literature, and her relationship with Hecate is not one of mere worship. It is one of direct priesthood. In the Argonautica, Medea is explicitly named as a priestess of Hecate. Her power is not incidental, it is her defining characteristic and her sacred duty. The temple where she serves is not dedicated to an Olympian, but to the dark goddess of magic. When Jason and the Argonauts arrive in Colchis seeking the Golden Fleece, Medea falls desperately in love with him. She agrees to help him, but the help she offers is not physical strength or political influence, it is the raw power of her goddess. The poem gives us a vivid, detailed account of her performing a ritual to Hecate. She goes alone at night to a secluded, fearsome place. She bathes in a sacred stream, dresses in dark robes, and calls upon the goddess by her many names, including Brimo, the angry or terrifying one. She digs a pit in the earth, slits the throat of a sheep as a blood offering, and lights a pyre of cedar and herbs. Then Hecate herself appears. The ground trembles, her hounds howl, and the goddess, wreathed in snakes and holding her blazing torches, materializes from the gloom. In this moment of terrifying epiphany, Hecate gives Medea the secret to creating a magical ointment. The ingredients are gathered from a plant, the Promethean flower, that grew from the drops of blood that fell from the eagle, tortured liver, of the Titan Prometheus. This is magic of the most ancient and powerful kind, born from the suffering of a Titan. The ointment, when smeared on Jason's body and weapons, grants him temporary invulnerability, allowing him to defeat the fire-breathing bulls and the sown men sprung from dragons' teeth. Medea's every magical act is a prayer to Hecate. She puts the serpent that guards the fleece to sleep with drugs and incantations. She uses necromancy and illusions to bring about the death of her rival, King Peleus, by tricking his own daughters into boiling him alive. And later, in Euripides' famous tragedy, when she is betrayed by Jason, she calls upon Hecate as the primary witness to her broken vows and the divine sanction for her terrible revenge. Her deadly poisoned robe, that consumes Jason's new bride in fire, is a masterpiece of Hecate's dark pharmacology. Through Circe, and, most vividly, Medea, we see what it means for Hecate to be the font of magic. She is not merely a symbol, she is an active teacher and patroness. Her followers are not dabblers. They are initiates into a dangerous and powerful tradition. They know the secret names of plants, the correct phases of the moon for harvesting them, and the potent incantations needed to awaken their power. They understand that this magic requires sacrifice, sometimes animal, sometimes moral. It is a power that comes at a great cost, often isolating its wielder from society and leading them down dark and tragic paths. Hecate is the source of this power, but she offers no guarantee of a happy ending. She simply unlocks the door, hands over the key, and allows her chosen priestesses to wield the terrifying, transformative, and often destructive magic of the earth itself. The worship of the gods in ancient Greece was a public and often joyous affair. Grand festivals filled the streets, magnificent temples stood as testaments to civic pride, and large-scale animal sacrifices were followed by communal feasts. The smoke of roasting meat and the sounds of hymns and prayers rose to the heavens, intended for the bright celestial Olympians. But the worship of Hecate was different. It was quieter, more personal, more intimate, and tinged with a distinct element of fear and appeasement. It took place not in the bright light of day, but in the encroaching gloom of twilight, and its central rite was a humble, mysterious offering, known as the Deipnon, or Hecate's supper. This ritual was performed on the very last night of the lunar month, the night of the dark or new moon. This was the darkest night, the moment when the moon's light was completely withdrawn from the world, and thus the time when Hecate's power was believed to be at its peak. The Deipnon was not a feast in the celebratory sense. It was a combination of three distinct acts: a ritual of purification for the household, an offering of food to the goddess and her retinue, and an act of charity. The process would begin within the home. This was a day for a thorough and symbolic house cleaning. The refuse swept from the floors, any old or broken items, and especially the ashes and dirt from the hearth, were all gathered together. This was not just physical cleaning, it was a ritual purification, a scouring of the household of all the negative energy, bad luck, and spiritual grime that might have accumulated over the past month. This collected debris, known as chasmata or sweepings, was considered a potent vessel of this negativity, and it formed the first part of the offering. As darkness fell, a member of the household, often the head, would carry this refuse, along with a specially prepared meal, to the nearest three-way crossroads. This was Hecate's sacred space, the liminal ground between properties or on the edge of town. The meal itself, Hecate's supper, was specific. It often consisted of foods that were either humble, symbolic, or associated with the Chthonic realm. Common offerings included coarse bread or small cakes called amphiphontes, which were decorated with lighted candles, echoing Hecate's torches. Other items might be garlic, a plant known for its purifying and protective qualities, fish, particularly red mullet, which was considered somewhat taboo and associated with the underworld, and eggs, a universal symbol of life, death, and rebirth. The person making the offering would place the food and the household sweepings at the crossroads, often at the foot of a Hecateon statue if one was present. They would then invoke the goddess, perhaps with a quiet prayer, asking her to accept the offerings, to carry away the household's negativity, and to grant her protection for the coming month. And then came the most crucial part of the ritual. Once the offering was placed, the person had to walk away without looking back. To look back was considered a grave act of disrespect and an invitation for misfortune. It was to risk catching a glimpse of the goddess and her spectral host as they arrived to consume the meal, a sight no mortal was meant to witness. The act of walking away without looking back was a gesture of absolute trust and reverential fear. Who was this meal for? It was, of course, for Hecate herself, but it was also understood to be for her retinue, her baying hounds, and the restless, wandering ghosts that followed in her wake. It was an act of appeasement, a way to feed the hungry spirits of the night, so that they would pass by peacefully and not attempt to enter the home. By providing for them at the boundary, one ensured they stayed on the other side of it. After the wealthy had left their offerings, another group would often arrive at the crossroads, the poor and the destitute. For them, Hecate's supper was not just a symbolic meal, but a literal one. They would consume the food left for the goddess. This was not seen as sacrilege. In a strange and beautiful way, it completed the ritual cycle. Hecate, in her role as a benefactor, the one who could bestow wealth, was also, through this ritual, providing for the most impoverished members of the community. Those who had enough to give would leave an offering, and those who had nothing would receive it, with the goddess of the crossroads acting as the silent, mysterious intermediary. It was a sacred transaction that cleansed the rich and fed the poor. Beyond the Deipnon, other, more personal rituals were also performed. Witches and sorcerers, like Medea, would conduct elaborate rites involving blood sacrifice, complex incantations, and the harvesting of magical herbs under the dark moon. Individuals seeking her favour for a specific purpose, safe journey, success in a legal dispute, or the conception of a child, might leave a smaller personal offering at any time. They might tie a ribbon to her shrine, leave a simple clay figurine, or pour out a libation of milk and honey. What all these rituals have in common is their location at the threshold and their tone of quiet reverence mixed with caution. Hecate was not a goddess to be approached lightly or casually. Her worship was not about joyous celebration, but about a deep and abiding respect for the power of the unseen, for the mysteries of the night, and for the sacred gravity of life's transitions. Hecate's supper was the perfect expression of this relationship. A humble meal left in the dark, a silent prayer at the boundary, and a profound act of letting go. The gods are not static. Like the cultures that worship them, they change over time, their characters shifting to reflect new values, new fears, and new philosophies. Few deities in the Greek pantheon have undergone as dramatic and revealing a transformation as Hecate. The journey of her image, from a universally honoured Titan benefactor to the shadowy, often malevolent queen of witches, is a long and complex story. It is a veiled evolution, where layers of new interpretation were gradually placed over her original form, obscuring but never entirely erasing what lay beneath. In the beginning, as we have seen through the words of the 8th century BC poet Hesiod, Hecate's portrait is almost entirely positive. She is the tender-hearted, a nurse to the young, a bestower of wealth and victory, and a goddess uniquely respected by Zeus himself. Her power is vast, spanning earth, sea, and sky, and she is presented as a benevolent force, a helpful intermediary between mortals and the divine order. There is little in this early depiction to suggest the dark and sinister figure she would later become. She is powerful, yes, but her power is largely wielded for the benefit of those who worship her sincerely. The first subtle shifts begin to appear in the classical period, around the 5th century BC. As Greek society became more urbanized, more rationalist, and more focused on the civic order of the polis, the untamed, wild, and chthonic aspects of religion were increasingly pushed to the margins. Hecate, with her dominion over crossroads, the night, and the restless dead, was a natural fit for this marginal space. While she was still respected as a protector of households and doorways, her association with the uncanny and the supernatural began to intensify. In the great tragedies of Athens, playwrights like Euripides seized upon her as a potent symbol of the terrifying, irrational forces that could erupt and destroy the ordered world. In his play, Medea, Hecate is invoked not as a universal benefactor, but as the patroness of a wronged woman's terrible, magical revenge. This is where her image, as the goddess of witches, begins to be forged in the popular imagination. During the Hellenistic period, following the conquests of Alexander the Great, Greek culture spread and mingled with the beliefs of Egypt, Persia, and the Near East. This syncretic environment was a fertile ground for the growth of magic, astrology, and mystery cults. In this new, more mystical world, Hecate's role as a magical deity exploded. She became a central figure in texts like the Greek magical papyri, a collection of spells, hymns, and rituals from Greco-Roman Egypt. Here, she is no longer just a patroness. She is a supreme cosmic power, a ruler of demons, and a figure who could be invoked to compel the gods themselves. Her image becomes more terrifying and monstrous. She is described with snakes for hair, her feet are serpents, and she is surrounded by a cacophony of howling dogs and screaming ghosts. She is the dog-eater, the one who drinks blood, a fearsome goddess for a world newly obsessed with potent personal magic. The arrival of the Roman Empire and, later, Christianity, marked the final and most dramatic phase of her transformation. The Romans, who largely adopted the Greek pantheon, identified Hecate with their own minor goddess of crossroads, Trivia. But as the Roman world grew more suspicious of magic, often outlawing it, Hecate's reputation darkened further. She became firmly established as the goddess of black magic, of curses and malevolent sorcery. With the rise of Christianity, the old gods faced a new and existential threat. They could not simply be ignored. They had to be either assimilated or demonized. While some deities were reinterpreted as saints, a figure like Hecate, already so strongly associated with the night, ghosts, and witchcraft, was a prime candidate for demonization. The early church fathers transformed her from a goddess, however fearsome, into a demon. Her triple form was seen as a mockery of the Holy Trinity. Her nocturnal processions were no longer just a train of restless spirits, but a legion of devils. She became, in the medieval Christian imagination, the archetypal queen of the witches' Sabbath, a powerful demonic figure who presided over orgiastic rites and pacts with the devil. Shakespeare, in Macbeth, immortalizes this view, invoking Hecate as the presiding spirit over the three weird sisters, the very embodiment of evil, supernatural plotting. Through this long evolution, a process of layering occurred. The benevolent goddess of Hesiod was never completely lost, but she was buried under the powerful sorceress of the tragedians, the cosmic demon of the magical papyri, and the devil queen of the Christian era. Each age projected its own fears and anxieties onto her ambiguous form. A fear of the untamed wilderness, a fear of female power operating outside of male control, a fear of foreign religions, and ultimately a fear of the devil. All of these were folded into the evolving image of Hecate. Her journey through history is a mirror reflecting humanity's own changing relationship with the concepts of magic, the night, and the powerful, untamable feminine. The epic of Jason and the Argonauts and their quest for the Golden Fleece is one of the great adventure stories of Greek mythology. It is a tale of a hero's journey, filled with perilous sea voyages, encounters with strange monsters, and the assembly of the greatest heroes of the age. On the surface, the divine machinery of the story seems to be driven by the Olympian goddesses Hera and Athena, who conspire to aid Jason in his quest. But if we look closer into the dark heart of Colchis, where the fleece is kept, we find another, more ancient power at work. Hecate does not appear on the deck of the Argo or in the councils on Olympus, but her unseen hand, her shadowy influence, is arguably the single most decisive force in the success of Jason's mission. Her presence is felt through her priestess, Medea, and it is her magic that overcomes the impossible challenges set by King Aeetes. Colchis, the barbarian kingdom at the far eastern edge of the known world, is presented as a land steeped in ancient magic. It is a place apart from the rational, heroic world of Greece. King Aeetes, son of the sun god Helios, is himself a powerful and dangerous figure. The Golden Fleece, the object of the quest, hangs on an oak tree in a sacred grove of the war god Ares, guarded by a colossal, sleepless serpent. This is not a challenge that can be overcome with brute strength or clever rhetoric alone. The heroes of the Argo, for all their might, are powerless here. Heracles, the greatest of them, has already left the expedition. The task requires a different kind of power, a power that operates in the shadows, a power that understands the chthonic secrets of the earth. This is the power of Hecate. Her influence enters the story through Medea. As we have seen, Medea is not just a lovelorn princess, she is the high priestess of Hecate in Colchis. The kingdom's magic is Hecate's magic, and Medea is its most potent channel. When Hera and Athena decide to help Jason, their plan is not to give him a divine weapon or a magical cloak. Their plan is to make Medea fall in love with him, thereby gaining access to her formidable magical abilities. They essentially decide to weaponize Medea's devotion, and by extension, Hecate's power for their own ends. The first great test is the trial of the fire-breathing bulls. Aeetes commands Jason to yoke two enormous bronze-hoofed bulls that breathe fire and use them to plough a field. Then, he must sow the field with dragon's teeth, from which will spring a legion of fully armed earthborn warriors, the Spartoi, whom he must also defeat. This is a task designed to be impossible. It is Medea, after performing her chilling nocturnal ritual to Hecate, who provides the solution. The Promethean ointment she concocts is a direct gift from her goddess. When Jason applies it, he becomes fireproof and is filled with immense, unnatural strength. He yokes the bulls and ploughs the field, not through his own heroic virtue, but because he is shielded by Hecate's magic, channeled through Medea's love. When the Spartoi spring from the earth, he follows Medea's advice, throwing a stone into their midst, causing the earthborn soldiers to turn on and destroy one another. The first impossible task is completed, not by an Argonaut, but by a Colchian witch. The second and final challenge is to obtain the fleece itself from the sleepless dragon that guards it. Again, brute force is useless. The serpent is an ancient and powerful creature, a child of the earth itself. It is Medea who leads Jason to the sacred grove under the cover of night. There, she does not engage the dragon in combat. Instead, she begins a low, hypnotic chant, an incantation in a barbarian tongue, calling upon Hecate in her triple role as mistress of the underworld, the night, and magic. She sprinkles the dragon's eyes with a powerful sleeping potion, a herbal concoction brewed with her secret knowledge. The great serpent, which has never known sleep, succumbs to the unnatural slumber. Its great coils relax, and Jason is able to snatch the golden fleece from the branches of the oak tree. The central goal of the entire epic quest is achieved not by the hero's sword, but by the witch's spell. Hecate's hand is visible in every crucial moment in Colchis. She is the shadow that falls over the entire episode. Her magic, wielded by her priestess, is the key that unlocks every door. Without it, the Argo would have been a tomb, and Jason a forgotten footnote. This highlights a fascinating tension in the Greek heroic worldview. The story celebrates Jason as the hero, the one who wins the prize and the glory. But the narrative itself makes it undeniably clear that his victory is entirely dependent on a power that the Greek heroic ideal often scorns: the dark, feminine, barbarian magic of Hecate. She is the silent partner in his success, the unseen force that ensures the fleece leaves Colchis. Her influence serves as a quiet but powerful reminder that even in the brightest tales of heroic adventure, victory is often found not in the light of the sun, but in the potent and carefully negotiated shadows. The gods of antiquity may have lost their temples and their state-sponsored cults, but they have not vanished. They sleep in the bedrock of our culture, in our art, our language, and our stories, waiting for moments of rediscovery. For Hecate, a goddess who was systematically demoted from an honoured titan to a demonic queen, the 20th and 20 honest centuries have marked a period of profound and powerful resurrection. She has re-emerged from the shadows of historical misinterpretation, not as a figure of evil, but as a complex and compelling symbol of feminine power, spiritual sovereignty, and esoteric wisdom. This modern revival is most prominent in the diverse and growing landscape of contemporary paganism and Wicca, where Hecate is not just studied as a figure of myth, but worshipped as a living, accessible goddess. The seeds of this revival were planted in the 19th century, with the rise of spiritualism and occultism, which saw scholars and mystics looking back to ancient sources with new eyes. But it was the birth of modern Wicca in the mid-20th century, largely through the work of Gerald Gardner, that provided the fertile ground for Hecate's return. Early Wiccan theology, with its emphasis on a horned god and a triple goddess, created a perfect niche for her. As we have seen, Hecate had long been associated with a triple form and was one of the original members of the Maiden Mother Crone Trinity. In this new context, she was enthusiastically reclaimed as the archetypal crone. As the crone, Hecate represents a phase of life and a type of power that has often been feared or devalued in patriarchal societies: the post-menopausal woman, who is no longer defined by her fertility or her relationship to men, but by her accumulated wisdom, her inner strength, and her spiritual authority. She is the wise woman, the healer, the keeper of secrets, the one who has walked through life's fires and emerged with profound knowledge. She embodies wisdom, introspection, and the courage to face death and transformation. For many modern practitioners, particularly women, embracing Hecate as the crone is a powerful act of reclaiming the dignity and power of aging. Beyond the specific role of the crone, Hecate has also been embraced as a standalone deity of immense power and complexity, appealing to those who walk less travelled spiritual paths. Her domain of the crossroads resonates deeply in a modern world filled with overwhelming choices and existential uncertainty. She is seen as the goddess who can guide one through life's major transitions, career changes, personal transformations, the end of relationships, and periods of deep psychological work. She is the patroness of what is often called shadow work, the process of confronting one's own hidden fears, traumas, and repressed aspects of the self. Her torches are believed to be the light that can illuminate these dark inner corners, allowing for healing and integration. Her association with witchcraft has also been completely reframed. In modern paganism, a witch is not an evil sorcerer, but a practitioner of earth-based spirituality, a healer, a diviner, and a person who seeks a direct, personal connection with the divine. Hecate, as the Queen of Witches, is therefore seen as the ultimate guide and protector for these modern practitioners. She is the source of magical knowledge, the guardian of ancient traditions, and the goddess who empowers those who have been marginalized women, the LGBTQ+ community, and anyone who feels like an outsider. She is the goddess of the fringe, the patroness of those who forge their own path. Devotion to Hecate today takes many forms. Modern altars to her can be found in homes around the world, often set up in a quiet corner or near the front door. These altars might hold symbols old and new, keys, images of hounds, torch, like candles, crystals like smoky quartz or obsidian, and herbs associated with her, such as mugwort, belladonna, or yew. Rituals are often performed at the dark moon, echoing the ancient Dipylon. Modern devotees might leave offerings at a physical crossroads, though today these are more likely to be biodegradable items like libations of water or milk, or symbolic offerings like written poems, rather than the food of ancient times. She has also found a vibrant life online. A global community of devotees shares art, rituals, historical research, and personal experiences through social media, blogs, and forums. This digital crossroads has allowed her worship to spread and evolve in ways that would have been unimaginable in the ancient world. This modern resurrection is not simply an attempt to perfectly replicate ancient practices. It is a living, breathing reinterpretation. Today's Hecate is a synthesis of the ancient texts and modern needs. She is the powerful titan of Hesiod, the psychopomp of the Persephone myth, the magical guide of Medea, and now a symbol of feminist empowerment and spiritual sovereignty. She has been reclaimed from the demonic caricature she became, and has been restored to her place as a complex, powerful, and deeply relevant goddess for a new age of silent witness, still standing at the crossroads, holding her torches high to guide those who seek wisdom in the dark. Our journey is drawing to a close. We have walked the shadowy paths of history and myth, tracing the faint, ancient footsteps of a goddess who resides in the spaces between. We began with a whisper at the threshold, and travelled back to an age before the Olympians, to a lineage born of starlight and destruction. We witnessed her unique and honoured place in a new cosmic order, a testament to a power so fundamental it could not be usurped. We have decoded the silent language of her symbols: the illuminating torch, the authoritative key, the instinctual houndand, contemplated the profound riddle of her triple form. A trinity that encompasses the cosmos, the crossroads, and the very cycle of life itself. We have stood with her at the heart of her domain, the three-way crossroads, feeling the weight of choice and transition, We have wandered with her through the moonless night, a silent sovereign accompanied by a retinue of spectral hounds and restless ghosts. We felt her compassionate presence in the plight of Persephone, her torch a steady beacon in the darkest passage between worlds. We saw her power flow through the hands of her priestesses, Circe and Medea, a formidable magic that could tame monsters and challenge kings. We have tasted the bitter herbs of her sacred pharmacology, and understood the solemn ritual of her supper, an offering left in the dark at the boundary of the known world. We have watched her image twist and turn through the lens of history, from an honoured benefactor to a demonized queen, and finally we have seen her rise again, reclaimed and re-envisioned in our own time. And now, at the end of this long meditation, what have we truly found? Who is Hecate? She is not a goddess of simple answers. She offers no easy comforts, no promise of unblemished light. To seek Hecate is to accept ambiguity. She is the goddess of the both and. She is both light, bringer and night, wanderer, protector and destroyer, benevolent guide and terrifying queen. Her realm is the grey twilight, not the stark black and white. She reminds us that knowledge comes with a shadow, that every door opened means another is closed, and that the greatest wisdom is often found not in the centre of things, but at their frayed and forgotten edges. She is the eternal liminal, the sacred embodiment of the threshold. She exists in a state of perpetual in-between. She is the pause between the last breath of an old moon and the first sliver of a new one. She is the pregnant silence in a room after a question has been asked, but before the answer is given. She is the energy that crackles at the city gate, at the shoreline, at the doorway of a home. She is the guardian of all the invisible lines we draw to make sense of our world, the line between sanity and madness, between civilization and wilderness, between the living and the dead. Hecate is a silent witness. She does not shout her truths from a mountaintop. Her wisdom is not contained in grand pronouncements. It is found in the quiet observation of a turning point, in the rustle of leaves at a dark crossroads, in the intuitive feeling that you are not alone on a dark road. She watches the hero and the witch, the king and the beggar, the mother in labour and the soul departing. She sees the cycles of life, death and rebirth not as a drama to be judged, but as a fundamental rhythm of the universe to be honoured. Her eternal presence is a comfort, not because she will solve our problems, but because she validates their existence. She stands witness to our struggles, our choices, and our transformations, her torches, a quiet promise that even in the most profound darkness, a light can be found. As you drift now towards the threshold of sleep, that nightly crossroads between consciousness and the world of dreams, perhaps you can feel her presence. She is the guardian of this transition, the keeper of the keys to the sleeping mind. The journey we have taken tonight is much like her own domaina, slow, quiet passage through shadowy landscapes of knowledge. The story of Hecate is not a history that shouts, it is a history that whispers. And it is a whisper that will continue, as long as there are crossroads to be faced, mysteries to be explored, and a long silent night to be witnessed.